Welcome into the ChiGuys Football Podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment for our salute to service. As a veteran of the United States military, it was my distinct privilege to have experienced some of the most incredible support from our civilian counterparts, from care packages while we were deployed, to programs that enable us to take care of and provide for our families with a stable foundation while we're away, and everything else that you can imagine. Your support has truly been the difference. If you are looking for a way to support our troops or are someone who already has been, then I encourage you to consider some of the following nonprofit organizations. All of them make an incredible difference. Please visit thewoundedwarriorproject.com, the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society at nmcrs.org, the Special Operations Warrior Foundation at specialops.org, freedomservicedogs.org, and hopeforthewoundedwarriors.org. For those who need the help, they deserve it. Let's make sure we take care of our troops.
Football fandom, welcome to the ChiGuys Football Podcast, your weekly source for fantasy football news and advice. I'm Donny Mac, and with me, as always, is Anthony Lucasser.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Well, we've got week 2 already down. Man, week 2 just kind of flew by for me. I don't know how it was for you, but I feel like we were just down here talking about at least how bad my first week was. Turned it around in week 2. How about yourself? How'd your week 2 go?
Yeah, I had a pretty decent week too. Just coming back from vacation myself, so I'm excited to be here, happy to be here, and trying to manage a fantasy football roster while you're on vacation, especially camping in the woods, right? Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it worked out okay. I took some key injuries going into this week, and so I lost 3 of my top 4 picks in redraft. So it was a tough week. I still put up a decent amount of points, took the loss, but I'm happy with the point total I got to keep me competitive for the points scored, for the tiebreakers and things like that. Dynasty, I'm gonna wreck everything every week, so I'm not worried about that one though.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Dynasty,
I'm coming for that trophy, man.
Yeah,
I'm coming for it.
We'll see. I mean, either way, it's gonna stay in the studio next year. So
yeah, either way, we're still gonna be good. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, speaking of big games this week, Peanut, little shout out there. Peanut had a heck of a week in Dynasty, 188 points.
Yeah, I think that's got to be like a league high record so far for the Dynasty League for us. I mean, granted, it just started last year, but yeah, definitely got to give her a little shout out. We completely missed last week. She blew up last week too,
yeah.
And I got a little talking to when I got home, and she saw the clip as we were looking through it before we posted it on YouTube. She was a little upset we didn't give her a call out, so that's definitely got to happen this time.
There we go. We fixed that.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah, exactly. I want to mention that since it's not going to be relevant throughout the rest of the show, I had a week where my kicker got me 17 points.
That's always got to feel good.
Oh, it does.
Oh, man.
And, it makes up for some of the lesser production from some other guys, but still overall a good week. I'm happy with it. I think everyone is, for the most part, happy with their week 2. Things are looking up. Things are getting a little bit back to normal. We're going to be talking about more of the studs and duds in a minute. But first, let's get to some of the news, notes, and injuries from around the league. And really, we should call this the injuries, and a bit or two of news. Because this week, 7 torn ACLs.
7 torn ACLs across the league, just a massive injury week. If you got out of this week unscathed, count yourself as lucky.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be scrambling for the waiver wire. It's going to be, we got to dissect this for sure.
Yeah, well, starting us off, and this is a big one, Saquon Barkley.
There's a lot of big ones.
Torn ACL.
Yeah, Saquon's out for the year. That's horrendous. There's a lot of big injuries. Luckily, a few of the bigger guys that got hurt, they're going to be making a return if, after a little bit of time, but NFL injuries happen. You always have to maintain your waiver wire. You always have to maintain looking at the guys that who should you start over who, your start sit decisions, and that's what we want to welcome you here to the show for. We want to help guide you guys through all these injuries and how to get through your season and get to that fantasy football title and claim that dominant championship trophy.
Definitely. Well, One of the other injuries this week that we will see returning, but after a couple of weeks, we have Christian McCaffrey, high ankle sprain, 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that one hurt me.
Yeah. I'm sure it hurt a lot of people listening, especially after last week.
Well, the number one pick, man. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But it's not season ending, so
another big
hang
one.
on.
Cortland Sutton coming up with the torn ACL. That's another big one, man. We were really hoping for him to take strides going into this season. I'm already looking forward to next season just so I can watch this guy play, man.
A couple others. We've got Raheem Mostert, who we were originally waiting for an update. We were able to find out, as of right now, MCL sprain. No time frame yet, but not expected week 3.
Yeah, so once again, guys, just keep in mind that we typically will record on Tuesdays, and so some of the information regarding injuries you're going to have to keep your eye on throughout the week. You should definitely know who is trending towards what. There's updates out throughout all the week. All you got to do is Google your player. It's not a big deal. But we just want to remind you, we do record on Tuesday, so keep track of these injuries as the week goes on. And then in addition to that, all the analysis that we give you is also going to be for half-point PPR leagues.
Yep.
Okay.
Devontae Adams coming up with a hamstring injury. We're still waiting on a severity update.
Yeah, that's set to be for updated tomorrow, Wednesday. So look out for Adams. That's going to be huge. Whether what you're going to do with Lazard and MVS, those guys could have massive weeks next week if Adams does not go.
Yep. All right, we got Jimmy G, ankle sprain, and we're at questionable right now.
Yeah, he's expected to miss. Look for Nick Mullins to be the streaming quarterback for next week against, I believe it's Denver. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show as well.
Yep. We've got Drew Lock coming up with a sprained AC joint, 3 to 5 weeks. We've got Paris Campbell, MCL and PCL. Undisclosed timeline, but from what I read, it's likely a season.
Yeah, they're cautiously optimistic that he'll be able to come back towards the back end of the season, but yeah, it looks like for fantasy football season, he's effectively done. You might be able to be looking at him towards the playoffs and into your championship matches, but at the same time, we'd like to see some kind of production history out of him before we start trusting him in our lineups at that point, barring any kind of irregular situations.
Okay, another one that may even be updated by the time you watch this podcast, Sterling Shepard, waiting on confirmation of the diagnosis, but right now looking like turf toe. The MRI was scheduled for Monday, so for us, yesterday. We have not received any updates today as of this recording. So by the time this goes up, you may know more about how long that's going to be. Not a great injury to play on, though.
No, yeah. If turf toe's tough. Anytime you're hampered by your feet, that's going to be tough to run on, man.
Okay, rounding out our injuries, we have Tevin Coleman with a knee sprain. The quote, could miss multiple weeks.
Yeah, and so that's, with the 49ers having a platoon backfield, it's definitely a good idea to keep an eye on what's going on, the exact injury status of these guys. You have both Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, which is their 1 and 2. You got Jerick McKinnon in the third spot ready to take the lead dog role there. So keep an eye on that. Jerick McKinnon's usually going to be a waiver guy in most leagues. So definitely good information to have. There's a ton of more injuries that we could be covering, but we're trying to pack in a ton of information into hopefully a 1 hour show. This is a jam-packed episode though, so we might be a little bit over the hour mark. So we're just kind of hitting some highlights on a few things. We're going to be leaving a lot of things on the table. Make sure you guys are tweeting at us or emailing us your questions and things that you need to know so that we can help you win your leagues. Right,
exactly. So rounding out our news this week, after we get past those injuries, we have news out of the Giants picking up Devonta Freeman, signed to replace Saquon Barkley, or hopefully step in that case.
Yeah, he's projected. They're in talks, and so the Giants are looking at bringing in Devonta Freeman. As of this recording, it was not official, and so we'll keep your eye on that throughout the week because the big waiver wire target in a lot of people's waivers process tomorrow on Wednesday, Deion Lewis, Wayne Gallman, or possibly even Devonta Freeman. If Freeman joins, my money's on Freeman. I think that this is exactly the situation he's been waiting for, and so we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, definitely. And the last bit of news this week, Blake Bortles, 1 year to Denver. Does anyone care?
Yeah, I was going to say, and? Is there anything else? No?
Right, no. But hey, you know what? We were kind of, this was not a news-heavy week. The news this week was injury, and so, but we figured we'd still try and bring it to you in case the 1 or 2 of you out there
Yeah, I mean, with Jeff Driscoll being the starting quarterback right now, you had to bring in someone to back him up, and Bortles is a guy that can at least step up and be an NFL quarterback, sort of.
Well, we'll see. All right, so that'll do it for our news, notes, and injuries of week 2. We move right along to our studs and duds of week 2. And this was definitely a week of quarterbacks.
Yeah, huge performances by the quarterbacks across the board. If you
none of them were mine.
If you bombed on a quarterback, man, I don't know how you managed that one.
Oh, I can tell you. Drew Brees
yeah.
and Baker.
Oops.
Yeah, well, you know what? We'll see. Not this week, but they will have their weeks.
They'll come back. All
right. Well, looking at some of our studs in the quarterback position, Dak Prescott, and I want to also throw in Cam and Josh Allen. Well, Cam and Josh Allen and Dak effectively each 400 or higher yards this week, coming in with between 34.5 to Dak topping us off at 39.8 points. This is monster production, especially for yardage for these guys.
Yeah, and even Russell Wilson right up there with 34.4 points. These guys had just monster performances. Josh Allen and Russell Wilson building off what they did last week. Dak Prescott having a nice bounce back game. Cam Newton building off what he did last week as well. This is really more of a continuation of what we've been seeing. Kyler Murray, kind of the same thing. I don't expect these types of performances all the time, but it is nice when you do see them.
Right. 5 quarterbacks this week above 30 points.
Yeah, no kidding. At least in our half-point PPR. And we do 4 points per touchdown for quarterback position as well.
Right. And even talking about just some honorable mentions, there's so many other quarterbacks we could throw in here because we've got 14 quarterbacks that were over 20 points this week.
Yeah, I mean, you even had Jeff Driscoll coming up right up at 19.7, taking over for the injured Drew Lock. But the few guys that I want to highlight here are going to be like Ryan Tannehill, coming off of a streamer type of situation. I think we called him as one of our streamers last week. I wound up with 26.8 points. You got Gardner Minshew, who I know I picked as a streamer last week. That's my boy. The Magic Mustache Man coming in with 24.5 points. And Ryan Fitzmagic bouncing back and actually having a pretty decent performance, huh? Coming in with 24.3 points. Good enough for the QB 10 of the week.
Yeah, it's good to see that coming back. All right, for our running backs, this is where we're going to introduce a new portion of our Studs and Duds segment. We call it the King of the Moment.
Space out for a little bit there.
I was looking on my sheet at some other notes, and I started reading some other notes I had here.
No, focus on this one. What are we doing? What is this guy?
King of the moment, king of the right now, where my brain is trying to be outside of right now. No, the king of the right now, the king of the moment of our studs and duds
is the top fantasy performer for the week.
Exactly.
I have Aaron Jones, holy Aaron Jones, busting out at 43.6 points, man. 18 carries for 168, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions on 8 targets for 68 and another touchdown. This guy balled out against the Lions, just destroyed them.
Yeah. And just as far as looking at the points difference between where we got Aaron Jones and the next name on our list, we're talking
18 points.
18 points.
18 points difference. So
that's how big of a week.
I mean, congratulations, Aaron Jones. You are the king of the moment, man.
Right.
All right, so our next guy for our stud category is going to be Nick Chubb at the running back position. 25.8 points on 22 carries for 124 yards and 2 TDs, also adding in 1 catch for 9 yards. He balled out. He and both Kareem Hunt, who had an honorable game as well, over at 23.1 points for the week. Cleveland finally got that running game going that I was talking about all offseason long. Between Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, these two are incredible. They're going to just destroy everything that you put in front of them. If you really dedicate to the running game, well, Stefanski likes to do anyway. Mm-hmm. And this is what I think is going to help alleviate a lot of the pressure off Baker as the year goes on. If they can really stick to this ground game, I think that it's going to be hard to stop it altogether, especially with their ability to receive coming out of the backfield. Even Chubb, too. I mean, I know Hunt's known for it, but Chubb's really great at it as well. And so I really like this Cleveland team to kind of dig its way out of the hole that they found themselves in after week 1. But they looked good in their bounce back performance against Cincy, man.
Yeah, and I love seeing Nick Chubb putting up some big points because I bet big this year.
Yeah, no, you did. You went all in on Nick Chubb for sure. I went all in on Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
We've got a surprising name on here. At least I wasn't expecting this name this high.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette. Wait, what?
Right. Exactly.
25.6 points, 12 carries for 103 yards. Oh, the 2 touchdowns. Okay.
Yep.
4 receptions on 5 targets for, is that right? Is that 13 yards? I might have to look that back up after the show and make a correction. He did have a 46-yard scamper for a TD, kind of skewing his average yards per carry, and that's kind of what Fournette is. He's kind of like the pedestrian 3 yards a carry kind of guy, but he's going to break one every now and again and just kind of really burn past the second level. He doesn't really seem to have the burst that I'm used to seeing with him. The last couple of years, he's lost. Looks like he's lost a step already, even at the young age, but as far as the stud category go, hey, he shelled out, had a great game, and if you took a chance on Leonard Fournette this week, he paid off for you. I just don't know how you can start him with the Ronald Jones situation right now, and Ronald Jones himself got a touchdown as well. Kind of a difficult situation there, so I'm not sure that anyone even got to capitalize on this Leonard Fournette touchdown, or rather 2 TD game, unless you're in a deeper type of format.
Sure.
Yeah, but a guy everyone does have, or not everyone, but every league does have, right?
Everyone wishes they had.
Everyone wishes they had. Alvin Kamara. Man, we're screwing this
Super
up today. Super Camario. See, that's what
Can you believe we're recording earlier than last week?
I know, right? No, I had some kind of a mix in my head between Alvin Kamara and calling him Super Camario.
Yeah.
Evidently, it didn't mesh well, but he did ball out today with this weekend with 33.9 points on 13 carries for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns on Monday night, coming in with 9 receptions on 9 targets for 95 yards on top of it. And that's what Kamara brings to the table.
That's huge receiving.
I mean, the rushing totals were great in and of itself, but you add Kamara's receiving game on top of it, and that's where he just really takes a step up into that elite category, and that's why you draft him with a top 5 pick.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, for sure. And then a couple of the guys worth mentioning, James Robinson and James Conner, both with very admirable games. James Robinson filling in very nicely for the departed Leonard Fournette, getting 19.5 points this week. And James Conner bouncing back from his down week last week. I know with the injury, you didn't really know what to expect. A lot of people didn't even know if they were going to pull the plug on him and just run with Benny Snell. But Conner comes out for 16 carries on 106 yards and adds a TD on top of it. And Benny Snell actually, I think, had negative points finishing the week.
Ouch.
So interesting turn of events for week 2 over in Pittsburgh. But
yeah, most definitely.
Here we are.
All right, well, looking at some of our wide receiver studs of the week, Calvin Ridley, 26.4 points, 7 for 10, 109 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Whew. Balling out, man.
Absolutely.
With Julio hampered a little bit too, Ridley's really stepping up. It's nice to see. It's very nice to see.
And not to be too outdone, another name I'm happy to see on here, Stephon Diggs, 25.3 points, 8 for 13, 153 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, they really let Josh Allen cook. I mean, going back to that stat that you were talking about with over 400 yards passing and 4 TDs, he only rushed 4 times for 18 yards in that game. Yeah, they really just let him air it out. And if that's what they're going to do on, at least more often than not, then yeah, Diggs is going to have a fantastic season. It's going to be great. If you got him as late as you did in drafts, as you probably did, you got to be singing high praises right now.
Yeah, I'm hoping everything you just said about him comes true because my team could use it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and rounding out our wide receiver studs, Terry McLaurin, Julian Edelman, both sitting 22 points, 21.9 respectively. Pretty good production here. We're seeing 7 for 10 out of McLaurin, 8 of 11 for Edelman. The yardage is where we get the difference. 125 for McLaurin, 179 for Edelman. Touchdown from McLaurin. No TD for Edelman, but still, these are good numbers out of both of them.
Yeah, very solid performances. McLaurin picking up right where he left off last season, and Julian Edelman really stepping up in this game. I mean, it's nice to see Julian Edelman have this kind of production without Tom Brady there, because Edelman has been a solid, reliable option in fantasy for a long time, but he's always had the same quarterback who likes his little slot receiver, right? Cam Newton has never really played that same. Cam Newton's a completely different style of quarterback, and so betting on Julian Edelman and putting him into your lineups and drafting him, those were all kind of risky propositions, and you had to really like the guy to do it. It's got to be really gratifying to see these kinds of totals.
Yeah,
absolutely, for sure.
All right, some of our honorable mentions, we have Deontay Johnson and DJ Moore, both putting up solid production. But another one to keep an eye on, CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb is a rookie, so keep an eye out in your league. He may be a waiver wire guy. A lot of people don't like to take rookies in redraft leagues because it is a small bench, and so you only have so many spots. And a lot of times with these rookies, you have to wait and see. You can't really afford to hold them in those kinds of positions. So, take a peek ski, see if he's there. I know he's definitely not in ours because we have a Cowboy fan. He's got pretty much every Cowboy on his team, I believe, at this point.
We have a lot of team fans that have been picking up a lot of their team-specific players.
Yeah, but we get a good mix, too. Yeah, we get a good mix.
All right, moving on to our tight ends. And wow, I mean, we had a big quarterback week. We also had a pretty big tight end week this week, too.
Yeah, Tyler Higbeast. 25.9 points, 5 receptions on 5 targets for only 54 yards.
But
the 3 TDs.
3 TDs.
That's where you're looking for production from tight ends, man. You're going to see tight ends kind of bounce up and down. It's hard to find the tight ends that you can really count on every week. You know, the Travis Kelce, George Kittles. You know, the tight end position is predicated on the TDs because, as far as for a fantasy production standpoint goes, because you're really not going to get a whole lot of tight ends that are just going to dominate and get a ton of yardage unless your name is Darren I am the Walrus, which, by the way, on our list, and so I'm going to go right into him next. You know, he showed out that last year was not a fluke at all. 12 receptions on 16 targets for 103 yards and a touchdown. I mean, this dude had almost 50% of the target share out of all the wide receivers for Las Vegas in this Monday night game against the Saints. I mean, he balled out and just completely dominated. And for some reason, he always just kind of he seemed to disappear out there, didn't he? And then all of a sudden, the ball would be in the air and there's Darren Waller wide open catching the ball. It's like, where did he come from?
Yeah.
What happened? It was
fun to watch.
Man, it was a lot of fun to watch. You know who else was fun to watch? Jonnu Smith.
I knew you'd be happy to see that name on here.
Boy.
There he is.
There's my boy. 22.4 points, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 84 yards and 2 TDs. Mike Gesicki having a breakout party. He's another one of my boys. 23 points flat on 8 receptions out of 11 targets for 130 yards and a touchdown. Those are totals I could get used to seeing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. If he gets that kind of market share and volume, man, it's going to be a good season. And then Jordan Reed kind of rounding us out. Oh, yeah, that little thing that's George Kittle injured, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They have Jordan Reed there. I kind of forgot about that. Well, he reminded us all in spectacular fashion. 20.5 points on 7 receptions out of 8 targets, 50 yards, and 2 TDs. So, you know, with Jordan Reed, you know, don't forget this guy was previously a dominant tight end in the league. It's really injury history. So he's kind of been on the shelf for a while now. Maybe he's fully healthy. I mean, let's see what I got to go back and watch the game. I haven't gotten to that one yet. Like I said, I was on vacation. I haven't seen everything yet. That's I'm going to be keeping an eye on that when I go back and watch this game later this week. And then just a few honorable mentions here. Dalton Schultz coming in, filling in for the Blake Jarwin. 17.3 points, and I swear every time I saw Dalton Schultz catch the ball, I couldn't help but think that should have been Blake Jarwin. Stealing the breakout season, man. 9 receptions on 10 targets for 88 yards and a touchdown. Goodness gracious, I feel so bad for Blake.
You think he's going to pinch that Blake out away from him?
Oh, man. If he can do this all season long, which, I mean, that's going to be next to impossible, right?
Sure.
But if he can do this all season long, then yeah. I mean, what do you do with Blake Jarwin? Because they did actually extend him. They actually gave him an extension coming into this year. I want to say it was like a 3-year. They're really counting on this guy on Blake Jarwin to be their guy. And now that he's gone for the season, they got to make do with what they got. And Dalton Schultz definitely shelling out. In addition, we saw fantastic performances from Noah Fantastic. He balled out with 15.7 points on 4 receptions for 57 yards. And excuse me on that one. And Hayden Hurst also had a really solid week with 15.7 points as well. 5 catches, 72 yards, and a TD.
Fantastic work there. Well, they can't all be studs this week. We need to have our duds. And just as exciting as some of our studs were this week, some of our duds are very disappointing to see some names down here. But let's start us off with some quarterbacks.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins. Man, if you started Kirk Cousins, I am sorry. That
one hurts.
Yeah, that's got to hurt. How does that happen? 1.5 points, 11 for 26, 113 yards, and 3 interceptions, no TDs. They got crushed. It's worth noting Minnesota only had 4 possessions in all of the second half. I mean, this was really a time of possession thing, but they are just getting dominated to open the season.
It's still no excuse.
Well, I did not expect them to get beaten so badly by the Packers and then following up by the Colts. I mean, they were very good. They were 10-6 last year, very competitive team, and so it's a little jarring to see them struggling this mightily this early in the season. But we'll see if they can shake things off. We'll see if they can rebound next week. We'll see what it like. Weird things happen in the first 2 weeks. It's really by the end of week 3 that you know what your trends are. So we'll see. 2 points make a line, not a pattern.
Exactly.
Daniel Jones also had a kind of a bummer week, 8.7 points. Look, I wonder if anyone saw that coming.
Right.
Yeah, maybe talking about the hard matchups and the hard schedule that the Giants have this year. Losing Saquon probably didn't help, admittedly. But Daniel Jones going for 25 for 40, 241 yards, no touchdowns, did throw an interception, and then he did run an additional 3 times for 21 yards. Yeah, honestly, he didn't look bad in that game. He looked fine. It's just a tough matchup, man. And he was going to Evan Ingram quite a bit. He was leaning on Evan Ingram hard in that game. Didn't really have anyone to step up and really take charge for him, though. And then Tom Brady with another disappointing week here, 9.7 points. 23 pass completions on 35 attempts for 217 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception, but he also did lose a fumble. And so Tom Brady not having a great start as the GOAT over in Tampa Bay. That's kind of concerning, huh?
Well, you know what? Maybe it's a problem with the heat.
It's just too warm over there, man. It's got to get cold. Once they travel to the colder states, he'll be fine.
Right, exactly.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, we got to get that.
Got to get the gloves on. He likes playing with the gloves. Remember?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So talking about some of our dud running backs for the week, we'll start with David Johnson, 6 points, 11 for 34, 2 of 4 targets, receiving targets for 16 yards, and yet this is still the bulk of the workload in the offense.
Yeah, I mean, everyone on this offense kind of struggled in this game, and they played Baltimore, right? Was that this week? I'm starting to get my weeks mixed up a little bit already. We're only in week 2. Oh, man. Yeah. But, yeah, David Johnson, everyone struggled in this game, and David Johnson, I was hoping to see a little bit of a continuation of what we saw last week. Obviously not quite as high of a point total. I think it was 18 points last week, but 6 points, that's not going to get it done. And I was really hoping to see at least a 10-point week out of this guy just so we could know that we could trust him, right? It's really difficult to trust anybody on this Texans offense at the moment because Deshaun Watson looks like he's struggling hard without his baby blankie and DeAndre Hopkins. Oops.
Yep. All right, so we've also got Todd Gurley, 6.1 points, 21 carries for 61 yards.
Yeah, that efficiency has to come up. And he ran some routes he definitely ran some routes out of the backfield, but really didn't get the ball coming out of the backfield at all. I'd like to see him get some receptions, at least a few. He's done it before, and I know that there's been concern about him doing it lately, especially with the Rams have all put out, before the offseason. But, man, you got to figure Todd Gurley's better than this. He's better than this, and I'm curious if we're going to see it or not.
Yeah, well, here's a name that should make some people a little nervous. Derrick Henry, getting 84 yards, but on 25 carries.
Yeah, I mean, he was also targeted twice in the passing game as well, but no touchdowns throughout the first 2 weeks. And now you have a sub 10-point game, and you can't really afford that from your first round pick. Nope. So are Henry owners starting to get a little bit nervous about this guy?
I would be.
I mean, what are you going to do, though? You're not going to drop him, right? Are you going to try to trade him? If you could trade Derrick Henry and still get some really solid running back value in return, I would absolutely go ahead and do that. I mean, Joe Mixon is another guy who's still struggling. I don't necessarily know that I'd want to make a move from one to the other right now, just because Mixon's got his own host of problems with that offensive line. He can't get anything going with that offensive line. They are porous. Mm-hmm. But Henry's issue is the quarterback just taking control of the team, and you got to figure that they're going to go back to him, right? I figure they got to go back to him. I feel like if you just hold on to Henry, just give him a few more weeks, he'll probably put up a monster in there. And if at that point you want to try to sell high and say, hey, I don't care whether he's this guy or not anymore, I'm just going to get off this train.
Yeah.
That might be the move to make.
Yeah. Another name on here that might disappoint some people, especially if you run a fab system like we do and you bet big, Nyheim Hines. Here we thought maybe, and turns out no.
Well, at least for this week. What happened? I don't, one reception, 4 yards, and
I'm
that's it.
seeing these
That's
stats
it.
here, right? Like, we have
Yeah.
a running back
After,
whose production is one reception for 4 yards.
I mean, to be fair, they played the Vikings, right? And so it wasn't exactly a pass heavy game script, right? They could afford to just let Jonathan Taylor pound it around, and so.
Which they did.
But it was still after Naeem Hines' touch totals after week 1 though in Jacksonville. You got to figure that they were going to use him heavy. I really like him as this year's kind of maybe a light version of Austin Eckler, but I especially with Phillip Rivers there. I mean, I don't know how the comp gets any better with Marlon Mack out. Jonathan Taylor, another Wisconsin back kind of isn't too dissimilar from a Melvin Gordon, and then you got Naeem Hines, who isn't too dissimilar from Austin Eckler. It all fits so well. You just want to put a little bow on it and hope that, this is a nice little present moving forward. Hopefully this is just a blip on the radar.
Yeah.
And we don't have any concerns about him moving forward.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, some of our wide receivers, and there's a name I don't like seeing on here to start us off at the top of the list. Why don't you take it away there so I don't have to say it?
Yeah, Julio, no touchdowns, Jones. 3.4 points, is that what that is? 2 receptions on 4 targets for 24 points. Dealing with a hammy issue, and he just looked hampered in this game.
Right.
There was more than a few passes that he should have had that I know he had the 2 missed ones, but one of those was a deep ball that hit him right in the hands, and he probably would have fell into the end zone had he have caught that. Those are legitimately right in the hands. Like, you don't see Julio drop that, and so I'm wondering how much this hamstring is really hampering him. It seemed like it was bothering him quite a bit.
Right, and it's the hamstring that really kind of bothers me with the reliability. Because if that's the kind of thing he's going to try and play through and then turn out and not really give you much production, even if he's questionable going into a weekend and then still takes the field, well, you're going to play him. You're not going to not play him. But now do I have to wonder every week, is he hurt and he's going to play through it? I'm going to start him. And now he's going to be fighting that injury the entire game and not being able to deliver what he needs to deliver.
And this is the reason why these are kind of the scary things, right? Because with these types of players, if they're active, you start them. You have to, right? And so you almost can't afford not to. And with Julio Jones and this, it's a soft tissue injury, and soft tissue injuries are always really hard to bank on. You never know when they're going to re-aggravate. That's a big thing, is when players will often play through injuries. That's just a part of the game. That's part of the NFL, right? Certain players are better than others. Julio had a penchant for being just injury riddled early in his career, and then towards this back half, you've seen him just be really reliable for fantasy football purposes. Although he does typically every season, even now, still tend to miss at least a few games, dealing with some kind of minor issue. And so here we see one cropping up. I expect him to be okay moving forward, but yeah, I might, if I'm in a position where I can pivot away from a Julio Jones, I would absolutely try to do so for at least another week and see how he looks and when he starts to kind of bounce back health-wise. Moving on, we have Adam Thielen coming in at 4.6 points. He had a dumper because, well, Kirk Cousins had a dumper. That's just kind of how that works. Mm-hmm. Allen Robinson coming off a really poor performance that I'm sure he would like to have that one back. 3 receptions on 9 targets for only 33 yards. Both Trubisky's interceptions targeted to Allen Robinson, and both of them honestly plays that you would have liked to see him make, to be honest with you. I understand that they weren't the best placed balls, but they were fairly decently placed balls. They weren't bad balls at all. And with Allen Robinson, we were just talking about last week with this contract issue with him and all that stuff. It did come out later on in the week that basically one of the major factors in this is kind of he wants that top tier wide receiver, that top Mike Evans type of wide receiver money type stuff, whereas the Bears are kind of looking at him as more of like a Cooper Kupp and looking at that kind of money, and it's really only the difference of like $2 or $3 million a year. So kind of like what you were saying last week is that little extra couple $1 million could make all the difference,
right?
But then he comes out and has a game like this, and you'd like to see him really he kind of faded off in that route, on that slant route a little bit, on the first ball that was tipped up that Trubisky had the interception on, right? You would have liked to see him really attack that ball a little bit better. The second interception where it was the jump ball and he pulls it in and he pulls it into the ball into his body, but then the defender literally just rips it away from him. You would have liked to see him come down with that ball as well. When you want the DeAndre Hopkins type of money, you got to play like DeAndre Hopkins, right? And so he's got to be a little aggravated at this because he knows he's better.
Yeah.
And I'm fully hoping that he bounces back and that all this contract issues stuff just kind of resolves itself. If you see him make those plays on those balls and you see him be a dominant wide receiver on this team, contract issues aren't going to matter.
Definitely.
And then the last name I want to bring up is T.Y. Hilton, coming in at 4.3 points, 3 receptions, 5 targets for only 28 yards in a game where we did see Paris Campbell go down with an injury. So yeah, this Colts team, man, it's just looking like a little bit of a mess right now. I mean, granted they're getting the job done, but they definitely handed the Vikings. But it's from a fantasy perspective, it's a little bit messy trying to figure out who you can trust on this team right now. Mo Alley Cox is the one who shelled out with the big game, and we'll be talking about him a little bit later.
All right, rounding out our duds for the week. In the tight end spot, we have Mark Andrews, 3.4 points, 1 for 3, and 29 yards. Not a lot of usage there, but you know what? And same goes, too, for the next one on our list, Austin Hooper at 3.2 points. And even going further...
You mean Austin Pooper?
Yeah, remind me of that. Well, but you know what? I will say this. Despite the fact that these guys are going to be examples of how tight end, very difficult spot to predict week to week. That's why it gets streamed a lot. But, you've got your guys that'll make those big weeks, like we mentioned earlier, but then same guys will come back the next week and just be underutilized, usually out of necessity or because they weren't needed. And it's just going to happen that way. Because what you're going to see then, with Austin Hooper, where did that production go instead?
Yeah, and that's going to be exactly my point, because I do I'm going to eat a little bit of crow on this one. I did recommend streaming Austin Hooper last week for this week. I really like that Cincy matchup, and the Browns put up, what was it, like 35 points, and in a game like that, it's kind of the ballpark that you would have put them in, and so in that kind of game, I figured Austin Hooper would have an absolute solid chance of at least catching one touchdown, right? With as much as they like to run and any kind of goal line carries, maybe do a play action pass to an open Hooper in the end zone. I was kind of hoping for one of those types of scenarios. Now, it didn't happen this week, but we did see the Cleveland offense start to execute a little bit more and really start to run their gameplay. I think as time wears on, you'll see Austin Hooper get a little bit more comfortable in this offense. You'll see Baker get more comfortable in trusting him. I'm not worried quite yet, but I'm also this probably tells me that I'm off Hooper altogether until he strings together a couple of solid performances, or at least one giant breakout.
Yeah, definitely. And then rounding us out, we have Jimmy Graham. I mean, like we said, it's tight ends. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't get the touchdown, then you probably didn't do anything, and obviously Graham didn't get a touchdown. Again, there's a lot of, you could stream Graham any given week, especially in the softer matchups, but there's so many better options ahead of him. I'd be surprised if anyone really started Graham anyway. You'd have to have really been happy about what you saw last week to go all in on that.
Most definitely. And with that, we will round out our studs and duds for week 2. But I hope you were listening closely to some of those duds, because you may have heard some names we're about to talk of here, because it's time to go to the wire, where we talk about our incoming week 3 waiver wire names that may be around available for you if you just look a little bit for them, or depending on your league composition. And one of those names that might be available for you, we're not sure, but at the quarterback position, Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger is a guy that not a lot of people wanted to trust because of that elbow injury, and then you didn't know what things were going to look like with Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, and you bring in Chase Claypool, and you definitely have a lot of weapons there, but in a one quarterback league, if you're in a 10 or 12 team format, you don't really have to roster Ben Roethlisberger, so he might be out there. He might be on the wire, and I feel like at this point, this is a guy that you can absolutely just trust and not worry about it at all. He's the bearded man is back, man.
Yeah, definitely. A name that I know comes up quite a bit, Joe Burrow.
Yeah, a lot of people were really hopeful for this rookie going into the season. Now, I mentioned that I was as well, and last week I was more disappointed in the Chargers game than I was expecting to be. I didn't expect it to be a great game for him, but he just had a lot of weird plays that made me take a pause and a step back, and I said, okay, I need to see what I see against Cleveland before I really want to bank on this guy at all. And I saw a lot of good things. I saw a lot of good things from Joe Burrow in this Cleveland matchup. His deep ball is incredible. This kid throws up a great deep ball. You really saw him kind of step up, look a little bit more comfortable running this offense a little bit. He's still got a lot to work on the play-by-play execution as far as a consistency standpoint goes. But Burrow is going to be a usable fantasy asset this year, absolutely. I might not use him, at least in the immediate future, unless there's it's a soft matchup. But this is definitely a guy that you could stream in a pinch for sure.
Okay, going a little bit deeper down into potential quarterbacks. Nick Mullins. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with Jimmy Q standing for questionable against next week, Nick Mullins is definitely a solid streamer candidate this week. Going against a soft matchup against the Giants, you should see him be pretty suitable for getting you by a week if necessary, for sure.
Okay. Last one, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I would have liked to put him in our streamer category for.
That's why I saved him for last.
Yeah, especially with the waiver. The problem is so what happened if you hadn't heard, Tyrod Taylor, the starting quarterback for the Chargers, got a pregame injection. I'm not really sure on the details on that before the game, but as far as I understand, it's pretty standard stuff. And he ended up with some shortness of breath, and I think someone even reported a headache or a migraine or something like that too. They ended up bringing him to the hospital, and so Justin Herbert got the surprise start last second against the Chiefs and had a really solid first outing, especially for a rookie, especially for last second. Herbert looked great and darn near beat the defending Super Bowl champions. Now, I don't want to make too big of a deal about it because Herbert didn't himself beat or come close to beating the Chiefs. Sure. The Chiefs offense did look a little flat. They weren't explosive like they usually are. Pat didn't really turn it on to like the fourth quarter, and then obviously with the overtime. But the Chargers still could have absolutely won this game. That overtime punt call, everyone I think is scrutinizing Coach Anthony Lynn for that punt in overtime. Look, I mean, I kind of get it, but this is overtime. It's the NFL, and you got the Chiefs on the ropes. How often is that going to happen? You know what I mean? You got a chance to beat the Chiefs, and that's a big deal. You gotta go attack that. You can't play that too passively because if you give Pat a chance to beat you, he's probably gonna do it.
Yeah, for sure.
But so in any case, getting back to Justin Herbert. It doesn't look like they're going to start him. It doesn't even look like they're going to evaluate him to start him. It looks like if Tyrod's healthy enough to go and is okay to go next week, they're going to just roll with Tyrod. They're not going to bring Justin Herbert back out. So you can't start streaming him just yet. But this is nice because in the near future, whenever it does happen and the team does announce that they're moving from Tyrod Taylor to Justin Herbert, you can take the matchup, you can take a look at it, and you can decide then if you can stream Justin Herbert right away because we've already now seen him. And so that at least gives us a warm fuzzy going in if it's a softer matchup and you really need a streamer, for sure.
Definitely. All right, moving on to some of our running back potentials. I've got a name for you, and we're going to break this down. Very simple arithmetic. Jerick McKinnon, because Sorry. Jerick. We're going to make this real easy for you. Because Mostert
got Owie. Coleman got Owie. McKinnon next in line.
There we go.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Down the line. There we go.
Yeah.
Next one up, Darrell Henderson. I like that. Make it easy, right?
Yeah, I'm down with easy, man.
We shouldn't have to explain why. It's all right. Out. Well, there's your next choice.
Yeah, there's your next man up. Now, keep an eye on Mostert because there is the outside chance that he can play this Sunday, but most reports are it's unlikely, but Jerick McKinnon could be a great waiver wire ad at least for this week.
Okay, Darrell Henderson, current leader in what do you have down here? Random merry-go-round at the moment.
Well, I mean, yeah, I thought it was good. No, are we not going to use that? Maybe we don't use that. We'll come up with something better.
Yeah, no. Go ahead. But continue on there.
Well, I mean, with this backfield, Sean McVay has come out and talked about taking a very Kyle Shanahan-esque approach to this backfield between Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown, and Darrell Henderson. And so to me, it really is like a random merry-go-round. See, I thought that was clever. No? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I got it.
Just didn't appreciate it. Well, you know what? You make the puns from now on. Cam Akers banged up in this game. Malcolm Brown hurted his middle finger, and Henderson balled out with the opportunity given to himself. You know, shelling out for 81 carries on 12 attempts for 12 carries for 81 yards and 3 targets, catching 2 of them for 40 yards. Brown is expected to play next week with that hurt finger, but with Brown only putting up 47 yards on 11 attempts while Henderson went off, can you really trust him? This sounds familiar. Did we talk about this already? Didn't we create like some kind of a fictitious scenario last week that
I think exactly this.
Wasn't it
We're
exactly
very close.
this?
We're very close.
Henderson going off, Brown really just doing nothing, and after everyone, clamoring for Malcolm Brown off the wire, Henderson steps up, and Cam Akers going down is kind of the cherry on the top. This is a backfield that's, man, it's gonna be from on a week to week basis. This is what we've been saying. It's going to be tough to figure out who you can start now. Right now, it is Darrell Henderson, and so what do you do with Malcolm Brown? Well, if you spent a decent amount of fab on him, now you got to hold him, right? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. That's why I'm hands off on this Rams backfield. I'm going to let someone else deal with this headache. Who knows? Maybe it's a roster bomb.
Yeah. Well, here's a name that should make for a pretty quick note. Mike Davis.
Yeah, short and sweet here. He's the handcuff for CMC. CMC's out for the next 4 to 6 weeks. He thinks sooner. I'm hoping he doesn't rush it back because we all saw what happened to Kamara and Barkley last season. Now, CMC's great. And even just watching that game, I was just watching that game earlier today. Man, is this guy good? There's no running back in the league like him. And I could understand him wanting to rush back, and I can understand him even being productive if he does. But when a football player is not playing at 100%, they move differently. And when they move differently, they have a chance at tweaking something else or re-aggravating an injury. Things like that. I just, hands off, let him get healthy. Mike Davis is the guy you can start in the interim. Just be aware of Reggie Bonifant. Check to see what his touch carry is like next week, just so you know if you can trust him moving forward while CMC is out.
Okay. And what do we think about Joshua Kelly? Excuse me.
Yeah, Joshua Kelly is a must add. If he is not already taken off the waiver wire in your league, if you're in like any kind of a home league, he needs to absolutely be rostered. He is looking like he's going to be the new Melvin Gordon in town next to Austin Eckler. Got a team high 23 carries against KC. He might not have the production that Gordon had just yet, but he's getting the opportunity, and he's looking good. Give him some chance to develop. Let him start playing a little bit faster. I think this kid's going to have a really bright future here.
Okay, this one's going to be a question based on what we've seen injury-wise this week. With Saquon out, is there anyone to trust in that Giants backfield?
Yeah, so I got a whole paragraph I wrote here just kind of explaining how to handle this Giants backfield. Are we going with the whole paragraph, or you want the short and skinny? Where are we at? We're at 47 minutes.
Go ahead. Just give it to us.
You want to give it? Oh, we're just going to run with it. Okay. So, Deion Lewis, Wayne Gallman, or the dark horse candidate, Devontae Freeman. I'm sorry. So, with Barkley gone, this is the scramble that we have a starting running back in the NFL open for grabs, right? And nobody really knows if it's going to be Deion Lewis, Wayne Gallman, or Devontae Freeman. Now, if you want a piece of this backfield that could potentially turn out to be a season-long asset, you're going to have to cover your eyes and throw your dart. Deion Lewis did look good last week against Chicago. However, this is a rather important detail. He literally was the only healthy running back on the roster. New York decided to make Wayne Gallman a healthy scratch going into the game, so there was no one else to turn to when Barkley went down. So there is absolutely a chance that Gallman, being the younger and bigger back, will be scripted to share a large workload with Deion Lewis, since it takes at least 2 running backs to make a Saquon Barkley anyway. I don't know how the splits are going to end up working out at the moment, but I think that Lewis is really just a third down back based on what I've seen, and I somewhat expect Gallman to get the majority of the first and second down work. But this could easily end up being a 50-50 split. I don't think Lewis sees the vast majority of touches here over Gallman, and I think that it would be more likely for Gallman to see the red zone opportunities, making him, in my opinion, probably the more valuable back to own in the long run. But we have to see how much utilization he's going to get. That might be a completely irrelevant statement. We have to see what the next game looks like, right? So making things even more murkier and difficult is the looming threat of the Giants signing another running back off the free agency market onto the roster. Now, Devonta Freeman has been just chilling out, kind of waiting for a situation kind of exactly like this, and keep a close eye on this one because I saw a report earlier today. The team's already talking to Devonta Freeman. It looks like all reports are indicating that Devonta Freeman is going to sign with this team. If that is the case, Devonta Freeman is where my money's going to be at. That's where my fab dollar is going to be at. Maybe not right. I probably wouldn't plug and play start him, even if you're a Saquon Barkley owner. I don't know. It's tough. If the Devonta Freeman signs before the weekend, I think that if you bid enough to get Devonta Freeman, you might be able to get Dion Lewis on the cheap, and then maybe even just roll with Dion Lewis week 1, just because you know that he's guaranteed at least some touches. Because you don't want somebody to goose you, right?
Right.
But running backs are kind of those things where we've seen it in the past. You a couple of days, and that's all you need to be ready to go to at least get a few touches in the weekend. Devonta Freeman, I think, would definitely be the most talented running back on this roster with Saquon down. So there you go, my friends.
There we go.
Good luck and happy hunting.
Yeah, a lot to take away from that. Thankfully, wide receivers, not quite as difficult this week. There's something to say, but
there's some good ones, man.
There are definitely some good targets worth keeping an eye on. Shenault Cole against Miami.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. You got Laviska Shenault and Keelan Cole. Xavier Howard should draw the DJ Chark matchup, but sucks for Chark. But Shenault is obviously being worked in very early into the season already. Even as a rookie, he's getting scripted runs. They want to get this guy the ball, and he's a game breaker. That's what he's. So kind of like the Mostert 80-yard touchdown that I know a lot of people are taking victory laps about, and having back-to-back weeks. Chenault's that same guy, and so with him getting the touch totals that he's getting, he might be worth that free stash ad. Keelan Cole also seeing a ton of targets, 13 plus points in each of the last 2 weeks. I'm in. I'm sold on Cole. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I've liked this guy from years ago, to be honest with you, but with the quarterback mess in Jacksonville, he kind of just disappeared off the radar, and now it looks like he's making his comeback.
Perfect.
I like it.
All right, I'm going to give you a name here because you've got something to tell the people who didn't listen to you before. Russell Gage.
Yeah, if you didn't believe me last week, stop being dumb. Pick him up and play him if your wide receiver needy, man.
See, he told you. You had a chance. This is your last chance.
Yeah, he's not going to be here next week.
Right. Okay, Traquan Smith.
Yeah, evidently he's the handcuff to Michael Thomas. I did not know that. I was expecting, so everyone was expecting Emmanuel Sanders to really ball out here, and that kind of makes it a tough question with Emmanuel Sanders. What do you really do with him? A lot of people are calling to drop him, and I mean, as a Michael Thomas owner, I'm happy if you drop Emmanuel Sanders because I'm just going to go scoop him right up. I'd still, I think, rather play Emmanuel Sanders over Traquan Smith when Michael Thomas is not on the field. However, Traquan did look pretty solid in this game. He looked legit pretty good. Not great, but like a capable receiver playing the Michael Thomas role in the Saints offense with Drew Brees and that team, which is a fantastic team. Anything can happen in any given week, and if you're competent in play on this offense, your odds of being productive are good, for sure.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Do you go looking for MVS on the waivers this week?
I mean, I'm still a Lazard guy, and I have Lazard pretty much everywhere.
See, and I have MVS. This is why I'm hoping you tell me something good here.
Yeah, but he's the NOS target, right?
Yeah.
He's the game breaker, and so whereas I like Alan Lazard because he's the more solid option, MVS is going to really blow up, and so when you're looking at those wide receiver threes, if you need to play a wide receiver 3 or maybe 4, MVS is not a bad play anyway, even over Lazard, right? Because it depends on what you're trying to get. And if say you're going against the number 1 team in your league, do you want to go with Lazard or MVS? No, you want to go with MVS because you're hoping he's going to break it out and bust off 2 long touchdowns and blow up over 20 points as your wide receiver 3 or 4, right? So it just kind of looks what you're, but depending on getting out of them. So for me, I needed someone to fill the shoes of Michael Thomas, and obviously Lazard's not going to do that.
Right.
But I needed to get some kind of guaranteed point total at the wide receiver position. So that's why I have Lazard as kind of my backup there. And I had him plug and play. I have Jalen Reagor as my game breaker, who is yet to really make his breakout. Carson Wentz is struggling over there in Philly. It's making it kind of tough, and I'm gonna have to hold off on Reagor for a while until he actually gets it done.
Okay.
It's unfortunate.
Well, and finally, over to tight ends, another streaming position, and we've got some options this week.
Yeah, I'm just gonna run through these really quick. Mike Gesicki, Jordan Reed, Mo Alley Cox. So if you're in need of a tight end to stream this week, Mike Gesicki went off last week. Jacksonville doesn't look like the softball we thought they were going to be, going into season. To be fair, they have a lot of really young talent, but Gesicki has to be poised to break out after last week, and I'm looking for him to hit the steamroller button and really show us more of what we saw at the end of last year. And this guy is good, man. He's an athletic freak. Jordan Reed, we talked about earlier. If Kittle misses more time, I don't know the reports about Kittle going into this Sunday. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that. Follow us on Twitter for updates. But with Jordan Reed, if he does get more playing time in Kittle's absence, you can absolutely stream him because, hey, we already know the San Francisco wide receiving core completely depleted. Backup quarterback to boot. And so you got to figure the big target's going to get at least some volume, making him, at least giving him a safe floor, right? Sure. And then Mo Alley Cox, the mountain. I am dubbing him is that Gregor Clegane? Sandor's the dog, right?
Right.
I'm just kidding. I know it's not. Mo Alley Cox coming off with Trey Burton and Jack Doyle both banged up. Mo Alley Cox capitalized on his opportunity on Sunday, catching 5 of his 6 targets for 111 yards. I've been waiting for this guy. This guy is gigantor out there on the field, just heads above everybody else, man. I mean, he's listed at what 6'5", 6'6", 267, but he just looks like a beast out there. He looks like a grizzly bear running around out there who's just going to paw the football, and you're not going to be able to do anything against him. It's soft matchup against the Jets next week. I look for Rivers to play with his new toy.
Alrighty. Well, right now is your chance to open up your apps and go looking to the wire and find some of these guys. See if they're available. See if you've got space to stash them or pick them up to stream them for next week. Get them now because you're listening to us and you're going to beat everyone else to the wire. We've got a few guys on a list here to hold your horses on. Now, you sent me a list of 4 names as we were putting this together, and I took one look at that list, and I agreed with every 4 name on here.
Me too.
Well, I should hope you agree with yourself. Why don't you start us off in the quarterback position?
So at the quarterback position, I have this guy with an average of only about 13.5 points, fantasy points per game over the first 2 games of the season. You may be really ready to send Baker packing to the wire and just start streaming the position for the season. Don't do that yet. At least not yet. Granted, Baker only gave you a shade over 16 points against Cincy in a game that, the Browns pretty much dominated the whole way. He still had to put up a ton of points, though, and he didn't really get a lot of production done. I get the worry, but, this is a team that's going to be predicated on the running game, as I was alluding to earlier. And to be honest with you, it should be. This is a really great running team with the 2 backs that they have, and their offensive line look pretty much capable to feature these 2 running backs, at least against Cincy. Granted, they're not the best defense in the world. But even still, the more the run game works, the easier it's going to be on the quarterback. You also bring in Austin Hooper, who's great at sneaking out for the easy receptions. You have game breakers in Odell Beckham. Even Jarvis Landry is highly talented. And, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt can take it to the house anytime they get a ball on a swing pass out of the backfield anyway, or a screen pass. And so Baker is still really surrounded by a lot of talent on this team. And I would not be surprised to see them start to kind of develop a rhythm where Baker becomes more of a game manager, but the fantasy production is there as a baseline for a volume floor play for him, because once they get going and he doesn't have to really carry the team anymore, I would look for Baker to, he's a guy that can take it out of the backfield, maybe run it in for a touchdown. He's got Austin Hooper for the big red zone target. He's got guys that are going to break away and give him the credit for passing TDs. I like Baker a lot. I'm saying hold on to him. He's got a game against the team who should not be named coming up. I'm using that as kind of my decision maker. I'm holding him for now. I might not start him against the Washington Football Club, but I'm at least holding him for now. If I have to go to if I'm considering streaming from the wire anyway, I'm just going to grab whatever quarterback I would start going into this week and, bench Baker if that's the way that I have to play it and kind of move on from there. Let Washington really be the tiebreaker here because we saw a decent game out of Baker and Baker looked really good. It was really encouraging to see him come out on Thursday night and just be completely energized. That's the Baker we need to see. And so if we see more of that, I'm in. If we see this arrogant, I don't care, morose, I'm getting beat up behind my offensive line every time I drop back, Baker, I'm out and off to the wire you go. And I'm just not gonna worry about it anymore. But hold your horses on him. Don't give up on him just quite yet.
Yeah, and I'm hoping everything you were just talking about rings true because in our Dynasty Q2 QB league, he is my number 2 quarterback there. So,
yeah, for sure.
Cross my fingers that
not a bad quarterback to have as
no,
your QB2
not as
though.
a second.
No, for sure.
So I liked what I saw last week, and I'm hoping we see a continual rise. Now, for our running back, hold your horse. This is probably my player surprise of the week. Not that he doesn't deserve it, not that he hasn't been capable of it in the past, but Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter with Leonard Fournette. I feel like it's kind of low-hanging fruit to pick on him here for this segment, but I also don't... I also don't feel like taking the heat for not telling people not to start Fournette against Denver, okay? Look, I know Von Miller is not there. I know Denver's offense isn't likely to put up a lot of points. And I know that we should look for Arians to focus on a ground game to eat up as much time of possession as possible in this game, making Fournette a sneaky start with, a great volume floor. Don't care. Don't do it.
Okay.
All
right, now you had a wide receiver choice here. And you had a few things to say with Chase Claypool.
Yeah, Chase Claypool. So this one it breaks my heart to put him in the segment, but
Well, I mean, looking at the points, first of all, 16.3.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to bet on this guy, right?
Right.
No, exactly. I mean, and I've come out on the show calling him this year's big. I think that if I had to put money on who I thought this year's AJ Brown was going to be, Chase Claypool was my pick. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think I mentioned that in our 3-part miniseries that we released, and I love this guy. I really do mean it. I really really like this dude, but I'm going to say these names, and I want you to do me a favor, and I want you to tell me where Claypool's name fits into the mix for guaranteed touches, okay? Just above or below Juju Smith-Schuster?
Below, for sure.
Right, okay. Deontay Johnson?
Likely below.
Okay, so he's at least third in line. Okay, right. So let's go even further. Let's go James Washington.
I'm saying probably below? It's getting a little closer.
Yeah, I mean, that was the question going into the season, right? Was he drafted to be James Washington's replacement, or is he? Are they all going to see targets? What about Eric Ebron?
This is where I'm thinking above.
You think above, okay? So that still puts him fourth in line. But it's still
a maybe.
Sure. I mean, with Eric Ebron tight end position, he's still newer on the team. We haven't really seen a ton from Ebron yet. We'll see if anything kind of develops there between him and Roethlisberger. But so according to this, we expect him to be at least fourth in line for targets.
Right.
Well, we're also not counting James Conner out of the backfield. We're not counting Anthony McFarland, who should be coming on out of the backfield, right, in weeks to come. Oh, and by the way, he was behind all 4 of the guys that I mentioned in last Sunday's game. He was 5th in line for target share, and he was tied at that. And so, give me a second. I just got to find my place on the paper again real quick. He was behind all of these guys on Sunday. And look, I like this kid. I have super high hopes for him in his career in the NFL, but I'm waiting till one of these guys ahead of him for like one of them to go down before I really start feeling like I can spare a roster spot for this guy with a limited bench and redraft. He's going to give you these NOS performances probably more frequently than we might think for being a rookie, right? But until he has the volume floor, or at least establishes that this kind of role in that Pittsburgh offense, that this is who this guy is, you'll never know which games you can use him for, right? He's got to really establish himself like Raheem Mostert did last year going into this season, right? And I know I used a running back as a comparison, but I just...
Still.
Yeah.
Valid.
Okay.
Finally, as a tight end, hold your horse, Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, Dalton Schultz is my hold your horses tight end pick for the week. He's Filled in admirably for the lost but not forgotten Blake Jarwin, catching, can you tell how much I miss Blake Jarwin? Catching 9 of 10 targets for 88 yards and a touchdown, but also losing a fumble. However, the Atlanta Falcons are not the Seattle Seahawks, so be wary of trusting the unproven. Jamal Adams is on the Seahawks defense. He did shut down Hayden Hurst too. I'm just saying, you might be clamoring to start this guy going into the week for a streaming candidate, and I would like to see how he does against a better defense first. And that was just kind of a weird game for the Cowboys to begin with all around against the Falcons. They came back to win 40-39, and they came back what was it, like 3 touchdowns they were down or something like that. Man, it was crazy. Yeah. It was a great comeback though.
All right, well there we go. We have Baker Mayfield, we have Leonard Fournette, we have Chase Claypool, we have Dalton Schultz. Hold your horses.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay, now it's time for a segment that, now that we are into week 2, and this is a little more applicable, for our Shy Guys football fantasy leagues, we like to talk about some of the big things that happen throughout our league. You hear us mention some of the big games at the beginning, but one that we think will help your team out a lot is to analyze some of the trades that happen, and we have our trade of the week for the Shy Guys football leagues. Why don't you let us know what happened there?
Yeah, so in our Dynasty League, we call it the Eternal Glory League. We had a trade that involved 2 of our league mates, and it was really the only trade that happened, kind of making it our de facto trade of the week. But we have it, so we're going to roll with it. Perry and Corey, here's our little unsolicited advice.
Listen up.
So Perry traded Noah Fantastic to the Silly Rabbits in exchange for Devin Singletary and Scotty Miller. With the Silly Rabbits desperate for a tight end with having Kittle injured, Noah Fantastic was brought in to be the savior at the cost of what might be the illustrious career for Devin Singletary and, Wes Welker Part 3, The Littlest White Pirate. A shrewd move, now owning 2 shares of basically 2 incredibly young and incredibly gifted tight ends that will be dominant for years to come. But you could possibly even use one of these guys as a trade bait down the line later on to secure an even better RB2, or if you're looking at trading Kittle, obviously you might even be able to get a low-end RB1 out of that. So once, Fant's value kind of cements its place in self, you can make that determination on which of those 2 that you want to keep. But, going over to Perry's side of things, he breathed a little sigh of relief letting go of Noah Fant, having Evan Ingram, his stud tight end that's carrying his team, showed that he might be able to be trusted to keep that tight end role, at least for a little bit longer. In desperate need of running backs, however, Perry had little choice but to trade away for more immediate usable depth at the other positions. Overall, I call this a pretty solid move for both teams. Best of luck, guys. May the odds be ever in your favor.
Well, there you go. That'll do it for our trade of the week. Before we put a cap on week 2, being the Shy Guys, we always like to take a little trip down to the hometown corner, the Anthony's analysis of our hometown Chicago Bears.
Yeah, buddy, quickly going to be my favorite segment of the week.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we'll kick this off.
This could be its own
here.
show.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. Should I be so lucky?
Yeah.
So with the Bears traveling into Atlanta, we'll see the first real test for this defense against one of the top passing offenses of the league. With Julio hampered a bit, the Bears could be in for a bit of a break, but then they still have to contain Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst, and that Todd Gurley guy. I hear he's pretty good. I expect Mitch to be and possibly feel pressured to be put up some points in this one, and that's kind of the issue with him, right? Gaining his confidence and being mentally prepared to be the franchise quarterback is exactly where Mitch struggled last season and exactly where he needed to improve this year in order to take that next step that we all need to see him take if he's going to keep that starting job. And as I was hoping, he's built up a little bit of momentum going into this one, right? And I think it's going to help him, but he's got to get plenty of room to take advantage of this Falcons defense. If he can hang in there, I think that will be enough for him to maintain his role, but I would really like to see him light the world on fire here. This is the perfect game to really make a statement and really define this season the way he wants to. We'll see if he can do it, but this is all on him. The defense is not going to win this game for him here. If he bombs and puts up a stinker, he may only get next week to bounce back, if he even gets that. And so I think that he's earned enough of a leash here in the first 2 outings. And I like what I've seen plenty enough from him in the first 2 games that I think that it's they're really only going to pull the plug on him in an extreme, in case of emergency break glass type of situation. I think if he doesn't get the job done here, I think that he will still get a chance next week against Indianapolis, like I've been saying all offseason. But he would have to have just a monstrously terrible performance in order for them to make the switch. And once that happens, there may not be any going back.
All right, well, still looking forward to another great season out of the Chicago Bears. Well, a better season out of the Chicago Bears, but liking what we're seeing so far. It's
you got to be happy with the 2 wins,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
I'll take them. I'll take them anyway I can get them.
And they have not made for boring games, that's for sure.
No, absolutely. And to be honest with you, watching that Giants game, the scoreboard was a heck of a lot closer than the game ever was. The Bears really dominated that game all throughout. You saw the 2 picks in the second half, but to be honest with you, it didn't look like they were really trying to dominate the game. It looked like they were trying to milk the clock a little bit more and just kind of hang on to that lead like they typically do when they get up. Matt Nagy likes to just kind of put the pressure on the opposing offense to put the points up.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Shy Guys Football Podcast. And as we begin to close on week 2 and look forward to week 3, I'd like to say now's the time that the patterns are going to start to emerge when it comes to consistent production. As we said before, 2 points, they're not going to tell you, 2 points of data aren't going to tell you everything you need to know. But
you need to see the pattern for sure.
Right. You're going into week 3. Pay very close attention to how your players have been trending because you're going to start to see those patterns develop. This is the time when it's still a little too early to make some of the rash decisions, as we told you in the Hold Your Horses segment. But you can start planning where some of your guys, especially the ones that you drafted high on, may not be starting to pan out the way you thought or aren't being utilized as expected. So week 3 is going to be crucially important going forward to keep an eye on those and get moving. But with that, we will bring the episode to a close. Thank you for watching the Shy Guys Football Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can leave a comment down below on our YouTube channel. And we'd love to hear from you about some of your big wins and losses, any questions you have. You can also tweet at us at ShyGuysFootball or send us an email at ShyGuysFootball@gmail.com. And if you also happen to be a coffee or an energy drink sponsor, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Power things.
Yes, exactly. So in the meantime, best of luck on all your waiver wire picks and your trades going into week 3. And until then, we'll see you next time.